Hello, I am Vicky Manitou Okas, and welcome to the Container Gardening Workshop. In this session, we are going to be putting together some tiny little gardens for my summer um, vegetables and herbs. So, there's some ideas for you to put together for yourself, and I'm going to explain how I do it as I go along. So, hey, join along and go plant your own tiny little gardens. And I invite you to join me at Delectable Tiny Gardens, the meeting place in support of people developing food security and resiliency. So let's get started. All right. One of my favorite things to plant is an old pair of jeans. So what I do is I tie off the legs. This one I cut the legs off. Sometimes I plant the legs too. But this time I just cut it off. I fill this with potting soil. Sometimes I make this a little bit lighter by filling it with straw or hay first and then put a little bit of potting soil in it. But we're going to finish filling this with potting soil. It's taking about a 5-gallon bucket of potting soil. I'm using the uh, compost soil mix that we had delivered. This is going to be a little This is going to be a little bit heavy, and I'm going to take, when I get done, I'm going to take some string and go through the belt loops. Here we go. Get that straight on there. When I get it filled, I'm going to go through and plant it. I'm going to go through the belt loops and put a tie in here to help stabilize it. So the pair of pants took the whole 5-gallon bucket, and that's going to be a bit heavy. That's why it's going to live in this chair for the summer, so I will take it out in the chair. So let's plant this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plant a perennial type of onion. I believe this is onions that I salvaged, that somebody dumped out in the back alley. And I believe that this is a Canadian meadow garlic or Canadian prairie garlic. So I'm going to plant 3 of those in the center. And those are just barely planted. Open that up a little bit. But these are just almost surface planted. So you just barely cover those bulbs. And it definitely smells like garlic. Just a mild garlicky aroma. But these have been growing in those pots since February. So just below the surface with that. Okay, now I'm going to finish planting this with some uh, greens mix. So that is the greens that I planted. This is a brassica mix. And I'm going to scoop a handful of those out. I've been harvesting out of there as well. And I'm going to scatter these around. This is a mustard and kale mix. And this mix was actually a microgreens mix, but they're growing nicely. So we're going to plant them in here and let those take off a bit. And that's good and wet. So the soil is good and wet, so that should be all right. It's rained on that bucket last night. So there it is. And I am going to put a string around it to stabilize that and put that out in the garden. All right. This is the last of the plastic baskets that I found at Goodwill. So what I'm going to put in this is some of the Canadian meadow garlic or Canadian prairie garlic. It's a perennial onion, and I'm going to put some thyme in here. And I will probably I'm just going to put the meadow garlic and the thyme into this container. This was in peat pots. So the peat pots disintegrated. So I'm just going to plop these in here. And you don't want that very, very deep, just barely, the bulb just barely under the surface of the soil. These are fairly shallow rooted onion. All of the onions are fairly shallowly rooted, so this will do fine in here. Eventually this will probably fill up this pot and I will have to redo that at some point. Yeah. The other thing that I am going to put in here is my garden thyme, and I am going to, since I don't have my scissors, just pinch that off and remove the top of the peat pot. Ooh, that smells good when I pinch that off. Okay, and pop that down in and give that a good solid firm footing in there. And the other one I'm going to plant over here. And again, I'm going to pinch that leggy top off remove the top of the peat pot. Now it smells like my spaghetti. Garlic and thyme, and it just needs a little bit of oregano to smell it, or oregano and rosemary. Okay, and that one will grow up, and I'll keep trimming that thyme so that it will bush out and get nice and full. And then um, eventually, the onions with the garlic will completely fill this pot. So at some point, I will need to thin that out or transplant this to something else. So there it is. So, what do you think so far of those tiny little gardens that I'm putting together? Do you think that you can put together a tiny garden like that? Or maybe something that's better suited for you? No matter what you do, this is one way to develop food resiliency and security in your life, or at least learn how. So, what would you put together if you put together your tiny gardens? And hey, stay tuned, and we will put some more tiny gardens together and see what works for you. So, like, subscribe, and tell me what you want in your tiny gardens for yourself. All right. So, over the winter, I was given a gift by the cedar tree next door. All of these little weeds, quote, weeds, in this pot are cedar seedlings from the tree next door dropped into my pot last fall and this spring. So they're growing up, and I am going to do something that is highly experimental. I am going to pull a few of these seedlings out of here and put them into this pot that I've already got ready. This is the compost and soil mix in here, and see if I can get some of them to grow. And if I can, then I will thin this out to whatever's growing. I will thin it down to about 2 plants and start a bonsai process with the fresh baby cedar trees. So I'm going to grab my trusty plastic knife. Okay, and I'm going to cut a few of these out of here. Very gently. Okay. So that's just a chunk of soil with the seedlings, and I'm going to plop it right there. I'm going to find another clump, and I want as much soil with that as possible. I really don't want to disturb those roots. I will go ahead and fill that back in a little bit. So I'm going to cut out this clump. Disturb those roots as little as possible. And put that clump right there. And I'm going to do one more. And put one right here. Cut down. Pull that out. Soil and all, roots and all. So I disturb these as little as possible. And we're going to see what happens over the summer. So there is my um, cedar bonsais. And the rest of these I'm just going to pull out of here because that's going to interfere with the citrus, which is, the citrus is looking challenged anyway. I grow these from seed um, that from the fruit that I buy at the grocery store. So sometimes they take and sometimes they don't. So going to treat the rest of that little bit of cedar like it's weeds. Salvaged a few of them. And there we go. So I've got a cedar bonsai started, and I've got my pot of citrus, which is going to need fertilizer and um, maybe a little bit of a acidifier in there to get that growing nicely. So thank you for joining with me today as we went through me putting together my tiny gardens for the summer. I hope you enjoyed the ideas that I came up with for myself. Maybe you can use some of them for you. If not, there's plenty of other things to use. And just remember that it'll be a few weeks before these gardens are producing, but it's always better to put the plants in the gardens small and let them grow into the pots than trying to fit a large plant into a tiny garden and crushing those roots. So let the roots develop into the pot instead of trying to conform them to what you have available. Start small, and it will be a much healthier tiny garden as you go forward. All right, thank you, and come and join us at Delectable Tiny Gardens. And then like and subscribe and tell me what you are putting together for your gardens in your life. All right, thank you, and join us next time.